The metal corridors of Station Apex stretched out like a maze of silver and steel. Everywhere you looked, there was something that didn't belong on Earth. Blue-skinned merchants haggled over crates of glowing fruit. Six-legged creatures skittered past carrying packages twice their size. The air smelled wrong too, like copper mixed with something sweet that made your nose itch. Beth Harper wiped the grease off her hands with an old rag, leaving dark smears on the fabric. Her jumpsuit was covered in oil stains from this morning's repair job on her cargo ship. The hyperdrive had been acting up again, and she'd spent 4 hours flat on her back fixing it with nothing but spare parts and determination. Now she needed a new coolant valve, and Station Apex was the only place within 3 jumps that might have one. She'd been heading toward the parts district when she heard the noise. Voices. Lots of them. All coming from the central amphitheater. Beth wasn't the nosy type, but something about the sound pulled at her. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was curiosity. Either way, her feet carried her toward the crowd before her brain could talk her out of it. The amphitheater was packed. Aliens of every shape and size filled the curved rows of seats, all facing a raised platform in the center. Bright lights shone down on the stage and Beth realized what this was. An auction. She'd heard about them but never actually seen one. This was where the wealthy came to buy exotic creatures from across the galaxy. Beth squeezed into a spot at the back, standing on her toes to see over a tall alien with too many arms. On the platform sat something that made her breath catch. It looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, 4 legs, wings, a long tail, and a reptilian face. But this was real. This was a living, breathing creature sitting behind bars made of crackling blue energy. The thing was smaller than she expected, maybe the size of a large dog. Its scales were a dull bronze color, like old pennies left out in the rain. One of its wings sat at a weird angle, folded wrong against its body. The creature's head hung low, and even from this distance, Beth could see the defeat in its posture. The auctioneer stood beside the cage. He was some kind of insect-looking alien, his voice coming out in clicks and buzzes that a translator box turned into words. This is specimen number 47. A Draxi. Grade F quality due to deformities and poor breeding results. The scales are the wrong color. The wing is damaged. Fire production is well below standard. We're starting the bid at 200 credits. That's just recycling value, folks. Beth felt her stomach twist. Recycling value. They were talking about this living creature like it was a broken toaster. A massive alien in the front row, all muscle and armor plates, let out a booming laugh. 200 credits? I wouldn't pay 20. Look at that pathetic thing. It's not even worth the energy keeping that cage powered on. Other voices joined in. Mocking. Dismissive. Beth watched the creature on the platform and saw its shoulders hunch even lower. Its eyes, they were golden, she could see that now, stared at nothing. This wasn't the first time it had heard these words. This wasn't the first time it had been rejected. Do I hear 200 credits? The auctioneer called out. His tendrils waved in the air. Anyone? 200 for the Draxi? Going once, going twice. No bids? Very well. We'll send it to processing for parts. Final call. 500 credits. The words were out of Beth's mouth before she even realized she was talking. Her voice cut through the amphitheater like a knife through silence. Every head turned to look at her. Hundreds of alien eyes. Beth's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her chin up. The auctioneer's tendrils twitched in what might have been surprise. The human bids 500 credits. Do I hear a counter bid? The big armored alien in the front row turned around to stare at her. His face split into what looked like a grin, showing rows of pointed teeth. Let the stupid human waste her money. She probably thinks it's cute. No one else bid. Why would they? This was a reject. A failure. Something to be melted down for spare parts. Sold to the human for 500 credits. Beth's hands shook as she made her way down to the platform after the crowd cleared. 500 credits was most of what she had left after buying fuel. She was supposed to use that money for ship repairs. For food. For the dozen things that always needed fixing on a cargo hauler held together by duct tape and prayer. The energy cage powered down with a hum. The creature inside, the Draxi, lifted its head slowly. Those golden eyes locked onto Beth and she saw everything in them. Intelligence. Pain. Fear. And underneath it all, a bone-deep exhaustion that came from being hurt too many times. Beth crouched down to the Draxi's level. She kept her movements slow and her voice soft. Hey there. My name's Beth. I know you've probably had a rough time. I'm not gonna hurt you. I promise. You must be hungry, right? The Draxi didn't move. Didn't make a sound. It just watched her with those wary golden eyes, waiting for the trick, waiting for the trap. Because in its experience, kindness always came with a price. Beth stood up and gestured to the transport crate they'd provided. Come on. Let's get you out of here. Let's go home. The cargo bay of the Pioneer wasn't much to look at. Scratched metal walls, a few storage crates bolted to the floor, and dim lighting that flickered whenever the ship's power cycled. But it was home, and now it had a new resident. For the first 3 days, the Draxi didn't move from the corner. He curled up between two crates, his bronze scales blending into the shadows, watching everything with those golden eyes. Beth left food near him, real meat from her own supplies, not the gray paste she'd read about in the breeding facility reports. The meat sat untouched for hours. But when she came back later, it was always gone. Beth didn't push. She'd been around enough scared animals back on Earth to know that trust couldn't be forced. Every morning she'd bring fresh food and water, set it down a few feet closer than the day before, and then go about her business. She talked while she worked, her voice filling the quiet spaces of the ship. "I'm gonna call you Ash," she said on the 4th day, tightening a bolt on the coolant system. "That okay with you? Your scales remind me of ash from a campfire. My dad used to take me camping when I was a kid. We'd sit by the fire for hours just watching the embers glow." One of Ash's ear fins twitched. It was the first real movement she'd seen from him beyond eating and sleeping. By the end of the first week, Beth started sitting in the cargo bay during her meals. She'd plop down on a crate across from Ash's corner, eat her dinner, and talk about nothing important. The ship's engine problems. The ridiculous price of fuel at the last station. The time she got lost in the market district and ended up in a restaurant that served food still moving on the plate. "You know," she said one evening, picking at her protein bar, "my little brother Tyler had a dog once. Meanest looking thing you ever saw. All scars and attitude. Previous owner had beaten it pretty bad. Tyler found it in an alley and just decided it was his. Took him months to earn that dog's trust. It would growl every time anyone came near. But Tyler was patient. Brought it food. Talked to it. Never raised his voice or his hand. Eventually, that dog became the most loyal friend Tyler ever had. Followed him everywhere. Protected him from everything." Ash's head lifted slightly. His eyes focused on Beth with an intensity she hadn't seen before. There was understanding there. Real understanding. That night, Beth pulled up files on her datapad. Information about the Draxi species. Most of it was corporate records from breeding facilities, but buried in the database she found older research. Scientific papers from before the breeding program started. "Hey Ash, listen to this," she said, reading aloud even though she wasn't sure he'd understand. "It says your species used to be different. Way back before the corporations got involved. You were smaller, yeah, but smarter. Pack hunters who worked together. Problem solvers. But then the military types decided they wanted battle companions, so they started breeding your people for size and aggression. Made you bigger and meaner, but..." She paused, looking up at him. "But they bred out all the good stuff. The intelligence. The cooperation. The stuff that made you who you really were." She scrolled through more files, her anger growing with each page. "They call the ones like you defective. The ones who come out smaller or different colored or smarter than they're supposed to be. But you're not defective, Ash. You're what your species was meant to be before people messed it all up." Week 3 brought a breakthrough. Beth was eating lunch in the cargo bay when she felt eyes on her. She looked over to find Ash had moved closer, just a few feet away now. She tore off a piece of her sandwich, actual bread and meat, not the synthetic stuff, and held it out on her palm. "Want some?" Ash hesitated. Beth could see the war happening behind his eyes. Fear versus hunger. Distrust versus hope. Slowly, so slowly she barely breathed, Ash stretched his neck forward. His snout got closer. Closer. Then his teeth gently plucked the food from her hand. Beth grinned so wide her face hurt. "There you go, buddy." By week 5, everything had changed. Ash followed Beth through the ship while she did her daily maintenance. He'd sit nearby while she worked on the engines, his head tilted like he was trying to understand what she was doing. His wing had been bothering him, the crooked one that never folded right. Beth had noticed him favoring it, wincing when he moved wrong. She'd rigged up a splint using medical supplies and some flexible metal strips. "Okay, this might feel weird," she told him, kneeling beside him. "But it'll help your wing heal properly. I'm gonna be gentle, I promise. You trust me?" Ash rumbled, a deep sound from his chest that Beth had learned meant yes. She worked carefully, talking him through every step. "There we go. That's it. You're doing great. Almost done. See? Not so bad." When she finished, Ash's wing sat straighter than it had before. He stretched it experimentally, and Beth saw surprise flash across his reptilian features. "You're stronger than they said you were," Beth told him, running a hand down his neck. His scales were warming up, turning from dull bronze to something with a bit more shine. "They were wrong about you. About everything." 3 days later, the ship's comm system crackled to life. A distress signal. Beth pulled up the coordinates and felt her stomach drop. A colony transport carrying families and kids was under attack. Pirates. 3 ships against 1 unarmed transport. Beth's fingers hovered over the navigation controls. The smart thing would be to ignore it. Her ship had no weapons. She was one person with a cargo hauler that could barely outrun a drunk turtle. This wasn't her problem. But then she thought about those families. Those kids. "This is stupid," she muttered, punching in the jump coordinates. "This is crazy. This is." A rumble stopped her. Deep and resonant, coming from right beside her. Ash had climbed up to the cockpit, something he'd never done before. He stood at her side, his wings spreading as far as they could in the cramped space. His golden eyes blazed with light, real light, bright and fierce and alive. Beth looked at him and felt something click into place. They weren't alone. Either of them. "The right thing to do," she finished, her hands steady on the controls. "Yeah. Let's go help them." The Pioneer jumped to hyperspace, carrying a human and a dragon toward a fight they had no business being in. But being smart had never been humanity's strong suit anyway. Doing the right thing even when it was stupid. That was different. That was what they did best. The colony transport looked like a wounded animal surrounded by wolves. 3 pirate corvettes circled it, firing shot after shot at its shields. Beth could see the shield indicator on her scanner dropping fast. Red. Critical. Any moment now it would fail completely, and then those families inside would be exposed to the vacuum of space. The Pioneer dropped out of hyperspace right into the middle of the chaos. Beth's hands flew across the control panel, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her ship wasn't built for this. No weapons. No reinforced hull. Just a cargo hauler held together with spare parts and hope. But she was here now and those people needed help. Okay, think, she muttered to herself, yanking the control stick hard to the left. The ship banked, putting herself between the pirates and the transport. Just need to buy them time. Just need to. Warning lights exploded across her console. Alarm bells screamed. One of the pirate ships had locked onto her. She could see the missile on her scanner accelerating fast. Too fast. Beth pushed the engines as hard as they'd go. The ship shuddered and groaned. Metal screeched. But the missile was faster. The targeting lock wouldn't break. Her fingers danced over the controls, trying every evasive maneuver she'd ever learned, but nothing worked. The distance closed. 500 meters. 400. 300. She was out of time. Out of options. This was it. Then Ash roared. The sound hit Beth like a physical force. It wasn't the roar she'd expected, not some angry, mindless bellow like the battle-bred Draxi in the videos. This was different. This was music. A high, crystalline note that resonated through the ship's hull, through the metal, through her bones. The vibration made her teeth ache and her vision blur. It was beautiful and terrible all at once. Beth turned in her seat just in time to see it happen. Ash's crooked wing, the one she'd splinted, the one that had always hung wrong, suddenly snapped straight. The crack was like thunder in the confined space of the cockpit. She watched in stunned amazement as the wing extended fully, perfectly, like it had been waiting all this time to be whole. But that wasn't all. His scales were changing. The dull bronze she'd gotten used to rippled like water, shifting and brightening. Bronze became copper, became gold, brilliant and shining. Each individual scale caught the light from the console and threw it back in different directions, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. The whole cockpit filled with dancing reflections, disorienting and hypnotic. Through the viewport she could see the pirate ships. Their formations broke apart, ships weaving drunkenly. Their sensors must have been going crazy from all that reflected light. She heard confused chatter over the open comm channels. Shouting. Panic. And then Ash's fire came. Beth had seen videos of combat Draxi breathing fire. Huge gouts of flame that could melt through ship hulls, uncontrolled and destructive. That's not what Ash did. Instead, a beam of plasma shot from his mouth, thin, focused, precise like a laser cutter. The color was wrong too. Not red or orange but a brilliant blue-white that left afterimages in her vision. The beam lanced across space and touched the nearest pirate corvette. Not the main hull. Not the crew compartment. The engine array. The plasma carved through metal like butter, severing power conduits and fuel lines with surgical precision. The pirate ship went dark immediately, momentum carrying it forward but all systems dead. The crew was alive. Stranded but alive. Another beam. Another pirate ship disabled. The plasma cut through their weapons array this time, leaving them defenseless but intact. Ash wasn't trying to kill anyone. He was stopping them. There was a difference, and somehow this creature who'd spent his life being called defective and worthless understood that difference better than most. The third pirate ship didn't wait around to see what happened next. Its engines flared bright and it jumped to hyperspace, abandoning its partners without a second thought. Inside the pirate flagship that had just escaped, Captain Vex stared at his tactical display like he was seeing a ghost. His second-in-command, a nervous Quellan with too many eyes, stammered beside him. "Sir, the scans say that was a Draxi. Grade F defective. Low-quality specimen." Vex's clawed hand tightened on his command chair until the metal groaned. He'd been raiding ships for 15 years. He'd seen combat Draxi before. Big ones. Expensive ones. Military-grade killing machines. That thing back there was nothing like them. That thing was something else entirely. "That's no defective," Vex growled, his voice low and dangerous. "Signal the fleet. Retreat. Now. And flag that human ship in our database. We don't touch her. Ever." Back on the Pioneer, Beth sat frozen in her pilot's chair. Her hands still gripped the controls, knuckles white. Her brain was trying to process what she'd just seen. Ash stood beside her, wings still spread, scales still glowing that brilliant copper gold. The light was fading now, returning to bronze but not the dull dead color from before. This bronze had life to it. Warmth. "Holy," Beth started then stopped. Words felt inadequate. She turned to look at Ash fully and saw him looking back at her. "Ash, you're incredible. You're absolutely incredible." The colony transport sent a message. Gratitude. Relief. They were limping toward the nearest station but they'd make it. Because of her. Because of Ash. Beth reached out slowly and ran her hand along Ash's neck. His scales were warm under her palm, almost hot. "They called you worthless. They said you were broken and defective and not worth the cage you were in." She laughed but it came out shaky. Emotional. "They were idiots. Complete idiots." Ash's eyes glowed warm gold as he looked at her. Not the dull, defeated eyes from the auction. Not the wary, frightened eyes from those first days. These eyes were alive. Bright. Full of something Beth recognized because she felt it too. For the first time in his life, Ash felt purpose. He wasn't a failed experiment or a reject. He was exactly what he was supposed to be. And he was home. Beth knew something was wrong the moment she woke up. The ship's computer was pinging. Message after message flooding her inbox. She rubbed sleep from her eyes and pulled up the screen, squinting at the bright text in the dim cabin. The first message was professional. Almost friendly. "Miss Harper, this is Director Talon of Apex Genetics Corporation. We understand you recently acquired one of our specimens at auction on Station Apex. We believe there may have been an error in the grading process. We're prepared to offer you 50,000 credits for its immediate return. This is a generous offer for a grade F specimen." 50,000 credits. Beth's breath caught. That was enough to buy a new ship. A real one, not a beat-up cargo hauler that broke down every other week. That was life-changing money. Her finger hovered over the reply button. Then she looked back toward the cargo bay where Ash was sleeping. She thought about those golden eyes. The way he'd saved those families without being asked. The trust he'd finally given her after weeks of patience. Beth deleted the message. The second message came the next day. Less friendly this time. "Miss Harper, you haven't responded to our offer. Please understand that all Draxi specimens are corporate property regardless of sale status. We're willing to negotiate, but we require a response within 24 hours. Beth deleted that one too. The third message was barely professional at all. Legal threats. Contract violations. Words like theft of corporate assets and criminal prosecution. Beth felt her blood pressure rising with every sentence. The fourth message arrived just hours later, and she knew they weren't going to give up. "They're really not letting this go," she muttered, pacing the cockpit. Ash watched her from the doorway, his head tilted in concern. "It's okay, buddy. We'll figure something out." But figuring something out became a lot harder when they tried to refuel at Waypoint Station 3 days later. Beth was outside the Pioneer monitoring the fuel transfer when she noticed them. 6 figures in tactical gear moving through the docking bay with purpose. They weren't station security, their armor was wrong, too specialized. And they were all looking at her ship. Her hand moved to her comm device, but it was too late. They'd already surrounded her. The leader stepped forward, a Chronite, all scales and muscle, with cold eyes that had seen too many fights. He held up a datapad displaying legal documents. Beth Harper. His voice came out in a growl that the translator rendered flat and emotionless. I'm Commander Dax, representing Apex Genetics. You're in possession of stolen corporate property. Surrender the specimen and no charges will be filed against you. Beth planted her feet and crossed her arms. The fuel hose was still connected to her ship. She couldn't leave yet. His name is Ash. And he's not property. Human, you don't understand the law. No, you don't understand. Beth's voice dropped, going cold in a way that made even Dax pause. My people have a history with the word property when it comes to living beings. Back on Earth, we used to call people property. Bought and sold them. Treated them like things. You know how that ended? With a war. With blood. With people deciding that some things are worth fighting for. She took a step forward. So yeah, I understand the law just fine. But some laws are wrong. Dax's expression hardened. He made a hand signal and his team moved forward. They pulled out weapons, stasis guns designed for capturing dangerous animals. The kind that could freeze a charging bull in its tracks. Beth's heart hammered, but she didn't move from between them and her ship. That's when Ash came out. The cargo ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. Ash emerged, and even though Beth had seen his transformation before, it still took her breath away. His scales caught the harsh station lighting and threw it back in 1,000 different directions. Disorienting patterns danced across the walls and ceiling. The operatives raised their hands to shield their eyes. One of them fired a stasis net. The weapon deployed with a crack of compressed air, spreading a web of energy meant to trap and paralyze. Ash's plasma beam cut through it like it was tissue paper. The net fell to the ground in smoking pieces. Another operative fired. Another net destroyed. But Ash didn't hurt anyone. Every beam was precise, controlled. He disabled their weapons without touching them. Beth grinned. She'd been working on something while they'd been talking. Her datapad was connected to the operative's command frequency, military-grade encryption, but not good enough. Her fingers flew across the screen, and then she spoke into her comm using a voice modulator she'd rigged up. All teams, specimen loose, converge on Dock 7 immediately. Her voice came out exactly like Dax's. Perfect imitation. Suspect is attempting to flee with illegal trafficking cargo. The confusion was instant. The operatives turned to look at their commander. Dax's face went from angry to confused to furious in about 3 seconds. I didn't say that. But station security was already swarming the dock from every entrance. Alarms blared. Armed guards poured in, responding to reports of illegal specimen trafficking. In the chaos of shouting voices and flashing lights, nobody noticed a human woman disconnecting a fuel hose. Nobody saw a cargo ship's ramp closing. Nobody stopped the Pioneer from powering up and lifting off. By the time Dax realized what happened, Beth and Ash were already clearing the station perimeter. Beth collapsed into her pilot's chair, her hands shaking from adrenaline. That had been way too close. Ash settled beside her, making a concerned rumbling sound. I'm okay, she told him even though her voice shook. But they're not going to stop. You know that, right? They're going to keep coming. She pulled up a star chart, her jaw setting with determination. Which means we can't just run. We need to end this. She looked at Ash. His golden eyes met hers. How do you feel about burning down a corporate empire? Ash's rumble sounded almost like laughter. Deep and resonant and full of something that might have been anticipation. They'd saved each other once. Now it was time to save everyone else like him. Beth set a new course and punched the engines. Destination, Draxi Prime. The breeding world. Where it all started. Time to finish this. 3 weeks had passed since word spread across the human networks. Now, the Pioneer emerged from hyperspace above Draxi Prime, the corporate breeding world where everything had started. But this time, the small cargo ship wasn't making this journey alone. 47 ships materialized in the darkness of space around her. They weren't military vessels or fancy corporate cruisers. These were working ships. Cargo haulers with scratched hulls. Mining vessels built for punishment. Survey craft that had seen better days. Every human operator within 5 sectors had heard the call and answered it. They came because one of their own had asked for help, and that was all the reason they needed. The pilot opened a communication channel to the planet below. Her voice was steady and clear. This is the Pioneer to Apex Genetics Control. We're here for the ones you marked as defective. You're going to release them. Every single one. The screen flickered to life, showing Director Ton's face. His expression was a mixture of shock and anger. "You have absolutely no authority to make such demands." "We don't need authority," a gruff voice interrupted from the mining ship Hammer. "We've got something way better than that." "Pure human stubbornness," added the captain of a survey vessel with a laugh in his voice. "And a healthy dose of spite," finished an old voice from an ancient hauler that looked like it had been flying since before half the crew was born. Director Ton's face darkened. "You cannot fight our defense fleet. This is corporate property under Galactic Council protection." The pilot smiled, and there was steel in that smile. "We're not here to fight. We're landing. You can try to stop us if you want, but ask yourself something first. Do you really want to start a war with humanity over this?" The human ships began their descent. While her fellow captains created beautiful chaos. Nothing violent, nothing aggressive, just extremely creative interpretations of docking procedures and traffic patterns that tied up the entire orbital control system. The pilot and Ash moved quickly toward the breeding facility. They navigated through corridors designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Everything was sterile, cold, calculated. In the deepest section of the complex they found the termination wing. The name alone made the pilot's blood run cold. Behind reinforced containment fields sat 300 Draxi. All of them had been marked for recycling. Some were smaller than standard. Others had unusual scale patterns. Their colors didn't match the approved breeding templates. The corporate breeders had labeled them defective, wrong, unsuitable for sale. The pilot looked at them and saw something completely different. She saw individuals. People. Lives that mattered. Ash stepped forward, moving past her to stand before the containment fields. The pilot watched as something extraordinary happened. His scales began to pulse with light, a soft glow that grew stronger with each passing moment. One by one, the Draxi behind the barriers responded. Their own scales caught the light and reflected it back. The glow spread from one to another like a wave of awakening. Colors that had been dull suddenly brightened. Wings that had drooped straightened and stretched. Eyes that had been empty and hopeless now cleared with awareness and understanding. They weren't defective at all. They had been suppressed, dimmed, held back by the very system that created them. Now they were waking up. The pilot moved to the control panel and worked quickly, her fingers flying across the interface. She had spent 3 weeks studying these systems, finding the backdoors and weaknesses. Security protocols fell away one after another. The containment fields flickered and died. "You're free," she said simply. "All of you." For a moment nothing happened. Then one Draxi spread their wings and rose into the air. Then another. Then 10 more. Then all of them. They poured out of the termination wing like a river of bronze and copper and silver. Colors the breeders had tried to eliminate because they didn't fit the market demand. Colors that were beautiful and unique and real. Their collective song filled the facility. It wasn't just sound. It was emotion, communication, connection. The vibrations shook the walls and rattled the windows. Alarms blared as the building structure protested the resonance. Outside, the human ships had secured a perimeter. The defense fleet hadn't fired a single shot. Faced with dozens of vessels crewed by stubborn humans who refused to back down, they had simply held position. Nobody wanted to be responsible for starting an interspecies conflict over corporate property disputes. The Draxi emerged into the open sky of their breeding world for the first time as free beings. They filled the air with color and song, circling higher and higher until they were visible from orbit. The Galactic Council's response was swift and predictable. They called it theft. They demanded immediate extradition of all humans involved. They threatened sanctions and legal action. Emergency sessions were convened. Corporate representatives demanded justice. The pilot's response was broadcast across every major communication channel in known space. She stood on the bridge of the Pioneer with Ash beside her and 300 freed Draxi filling the viewports behind her. Her message was simple. They're not things to be stolen. They're people who were imprisoned. You want them back? You'll have to come through every human in this sector first. And let me tell you something about humans. We're really, really good at being inconvenient when we think something matters. Behind her, the freed Draxi spread their wings in a display of unity and strength. The message was clear. This wasn't just one pilot making empty threats. This was the beginning of something larger. The council deliberated for 3 days. They reviewed legal precedents. They consulted with ethicists and corporate lawyers. They calculated the political cost of enforcement versus the cost of backing down. In the end, they made their choice. All charges were quietly dropped. The official statement mentioned diplomatic considerations and ongoing reviews of sentient rights policies. Nobody admitted wrongdoing, but nobody pushed the issue further either. Years passed and the galaxy changed. The Draxi weren't extinct curiosities anymore. They weren't corporate products or luxury companions. They were citizens, colleagues, friends. They served on ships alongside humans. They taught in universities, sharing their unique perspectives on art and music and connection. They built communities where their colors and variations were celebrated rather than eliminated. And it all started because one human pilot looked at a broken creature in a cage and thought something different. She didn't see a defective product. She saw someone waiting for a chance. Now the pilot sat in her captain's chair with Ash beside her. The Pioneer's engines hummed as they prepared for another hyperspace jump. Her crew had grown. Several of the freed Draxi had joined her missions, along with a few other humans who believed in what they were doing. "Where are we headed next?" she asked, checking the navigation systems. Ash's rumble sounded like deep contentment mixed with anticipation. His scales glowed softly in the bridge's light. It didn't really matter where they went. Whatever they found, whatever challenges waited in the next system or the one after that, they would face it together. Because that's what humans did. When they saw something wrong, they didn't look away and keep moving. When they found someone who needed help, they didn't calculate whether it was profitable or convenient. They saw potential where others saw problems. They saw people where others saw products. And they set them free. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.